This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. The United States is being destabilized by a Marxist takeover, and the Democrats are funding and encouraging it. They, along with global socialists, are desperately trying to cling to their waning power over America. These radical leftists are willing to destroy the country because they not only hate America, but also favor a godless, oppressive, socialist state where only two classes can exist: the wealthy ruling class and the enslaved majority, with every facet of life controlled. Now, the reason why I talk so much about Harry and Meghan is because they are the face of this destruction. The globalist agenda 2030 is real, and the royal family, specifically the king, fully support it, aligning with not only the World Health Organization, but also the United Nations. The unrest targeting Donald Trump stems from the wealthy, power-hungry bureaucrats and politicians who can no longer plunder America's wealth and control what people believe and see. Now, I think many of you can agree with me that we are in some type of spiritual battle where we're confronting a frightening evil perpetrated by these very same people. And if we go back to the year 2020, when the globalists unleashed a bioweapon onto the world, in my opinion, it truly was to prevent Donald Trump from returning to office. And when you think about the lengths that these globalists went to steal the U.S. election, it was evident, involving this global effort from various countries in different capacities. Prince Harry meddled in our 2020 election, actively engaging in the censorship complex alongside organizations that censored and harmed innocent Americans for their online opinions. He also supported those BLM riots and encouraged their mobilization. What is happening now mirrors the events leading up to the 2020 election. Now, at the time, many of us didn't understand the CIA's tactics for forcing regime changes in other countries. But today, with the exposure of U.S. aid and NGOs like Archewell Fugazi Public Charity, it's clear those same CIA regime change tactics were used against the American people, fostering this color revolution to ensure Biden's installation. To me, it's infuriating that these same actors are preparing to cause disruption and harm again, and it's unsettling because their actions will likely be larger and more destructive. The open borders, allowing military-age men from countries hostile to America, are particularly concerning to me, as their numbers exceed those of the police. What angers me is knowing that Harry, Meghan, and their corrupt circle of friends support the organizations planning this chaos and destruction set to unfold this coming Saturday. I mean, look at this map. It's deeply troubling to me that the whole Northeast, particularly New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, the tri-state area, is covered with these dots indicating protests. Like, where am I going to go? Even if I wanted to leave the city, the whole place is saturated. Like, what is going to happen on Saturday? Like, these people are not peaceful, even though that's the terminology that they're using. They're not peaceful. These riots are anything but peaceful. And when we look at the people who are backing, funding, supporting this little shindig that's going to go down on Saturday, you realize that they don't care about the dignity or the integrity of this country. They don't give a shit about this country going up in flames. No, they're just pissed off that their money has been cut off from stealing from the U.S. taxpayer. And when you see people like Christy Walton, who is the heiress to the Walmart fortune and family who funds and supports African parks, and know that the Baka people are getting raped and beaten, all because it's these bitches who are trying to take over the land and make profit off of it so they can get richer. I'm going to tell you this now. African Parks was never about conservation for these politicians and Prince Harry. You see, one thing that you'll notice is that all these organizations pretty much are funded by all the same people. Like, when you take a look at all the organizations that are going to support this destruction on Saturday are funded by people like Harry and Meghan. The ones that are circled in red are specifically the organizations that have received money from the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity or had something to do with Meghan and Harry, like Moms Rising Together. Remember Meghan's 40 by 40? We have the National Women's Law Center Action Fund, Free Press Action to drive censorship. And how can we forget Color of Change, where the CEO, Rashad Robinson, was on the Aspen Commission on Information Disorder with Prince Harry and had Prince Harry help him with promoting, supporting the BLM riots and mobilizing people. Remember this back in 2020? I've talked about this organization in past videos, explaining that this particular organization started by Van Jones, who was a known communist Marxist, working directly under the Obama administration. The CEO, Rashad Robinson, makes $500,000 to mobilize people to disrupt communities.
Really nice to see you, really nice to talk again. For everybody else that has joined this call, Rashad and I have been talking over the last few months about racial injustice since the protests in America began after the murder of George Floyd. He and Color of Change have been leading on the issues that affect not only Black people's lives, but also how we function and treat one another in society overall. And on that, Rashad, on how we treat each other in society, I know we want to dig into the state of our online communities and how those communities can be and have been weaponized to promote hate, bigotry, and racism.
Knowing what we know now, in this psyops with Harry and Meghan that's still ongoing, you recognize that these tactics that they had been using when they talk about bigotry and hate and systemic racism, you realize that they fabricated these narratives in order to influence and push this Marxist agenda. Listen to what Rashad Robinson says exactly on this point.
But Rashad, before we get onto that, maybe we could start by putting the past couple of months in context of what we're seeing grow in the collective consciousness of people across the US and the world.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, and it's good to talk with you again. And it's been great talking with you and Meghan about racial justice, about what we can do in this moment to truly make change, and change that's going to impact so many people's lives here in America and potentially around the world. And I think so much of what's happening right now is about how do we translate analysis, awareness, the visibility of this moment into action. Action actually has the ability to propel real change. And if we just stay in analysis, if we just stay in caring, thinking about the issue, and we don't move to action, we will not use this moment, not leverage this moment in all of the ways that I think we have a real opportunity to. And so, as I think about this moment, as I want to put it into context for people who are watching, this is the opportunity to get involved, the opportunity to raise your voice, the opportunity to make real change, because 5, 10, 15 years from now, we will look back at this moment, and the question we will all ask ourselves is not what did we think about what was happening, but what did we do?
It's such a good point. I mean, you mentioned the importance of clearly moving forward from analysis into action after so many decades of talk, of conversation, which is of course one place where it needs to start, but actually acting. And again, with the Black Lives Matter, it's a movement, right? It's a movement that doesn't have an address. It doesn't have one individual leader. It is a collective movement across the world. And we simply can't get stuck in analysis. So how do we break the norm down and shift to a position of what you say is real action on an issue like racial justice?
So what did BLM do? Absolutely nothing. What did it cause? It set us back in race relations 50 years, thanks to Meghan. How much money did it cost? Billions. And whose pockets did it go into? It went into the pockets of organizations like this that actually is designed to continue to hurt society by keeping the oppression narrative alive.
Well, we want to direct people's energy the right way, right? And so I think some of it does start with the story. So that piece of how do we shape the unwritten rules of what people think and what drives people towards the right set of action.
This is all about how to manipulate you into doing what they want. Listen to what he says again very closely.
Well, we want to direct people's energy the right way, right? And so I think some of it does start with the story. So that piece of how do we shape the unwritten rules of what people think and what drives people towards the right set of action.
I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody telling me how I should be thinking or how I should be feeling. But this is what Marxists do. This is what Marxists want.
And so I talk a lot about sort of not just telling stories that are unfortunate, where we see inequality, poverty, racism, sexism as unfortunate, almost like it's a car accident, but we tell stories that are unjust. And we focus not on the fact that it just happened, but we work to recognize that the problems and the challenges we are facing in our society are manufactured. The thing is if that we tell stories that make it seem like it's just a car accident, then we end up with charitable solutions to structural and systemic problems. So we will have people get really excited and stop at service days at inner city schools instead of working to actually change unequal education. We will have folks see a water crisis in a city like Flint, Michigan, and they will send water bottles and stop at water bottles instead of actually changing the pipes. Charity is not bad, but when we use charity to substitute the work to actually change the rules, then we don't put ourselves in the situation to build towards justice. And so part of this work, part of this moment that we are in is really making sure that from analysis to action, that we drive action towards structural and systemic change, changing the rules that have held people back.
And just as much as so many people have said, you're not born to hate. That becomes a learned behavior. And touching on what you spoke about earlier, like we've allowed society to become obsessed with storytelling. And inevitably with that storytelling comes this almost addiction to divisiveness, where we become so judgmental of one another. And I think there are certain tools that exist that we might not be aware of that is reducing our ability to be compassionate for other people and reducing our ability to be empathetic. But for me, I think without even knowing about it, compassion and empathy are two of the greatest tools to be able to bring the world together, especially now more than ever. And coming from the privileged background that I come from, and that at the same time as traveling across the world, meeting communities and people all over the world in some really dire situations, I think you have to have compassion. And for me, part of my work, or the importance of my work, I believe, is trying to put myself in other people's shoes. You can't exist in today's world cruising around, doing work, doing play, whatever it is, without at least trying your very best to have an understanding of what that group of people or what that individual might be going through. And I don't think, especially with Black Lives Matter and everything else that's going on at the moment, I don't think we can get over this. I don't think we can actually make this movement a success unless we all have compassion, because otherwise you're just looking at the Black community going, okay, this is over to you guys, which is crazy. That doesn't sit well with me, and it certainly doesn't make sense. Every single one of us is going to have to be part of this. But if you are able to have compassion and be able to have some empathy for other people that their lives is so vastly different to yours, then your awareness is raised to issues that you would not have been aware of before.
So part of this sort of work, the work that white people have to do, is the work to act, to work to undo the systems and the structures that have created the problem. Because racism is not simply about my individual acts of prejudice. It is about a system that rewards it, that prioritizes it, that allows it to be beneficial. And then that system replicating itself over and over again in deeply hostile ways.
This is now the opportunity to take that moment and be able to educate ourselves and to learn. You can't just sit back and go, oh, I knew this was a problem, but it looks like it's being fixed. It's like, no, that's why it's still around. You know, systemic racism is still exists because someone is benefiting from it.
You see, the liberal left and these demon rats fully understand how to use racism as a way to keep people divided, as well as to exploit and make money off of it. And we saw that with Meghan Markle and how she weaponized race from the very beginning to get what she wanted.
What does it mean to have a compassionate society? A society where you can hope a police officer will be compassionate, but you only get a compassionate system when the rules protect people from the police officers who are not compassionate. And when the ways in which we are treated just don't depend on what an individual officer thinks and feels, but on how the system holds everyone accountable. And so the kind of work that we're trying to do is take these ideas of compassion, take these ideas of empathy, take these ideas of caring, and make them part of how we treat one another at the system level, how the rules are set up, and how society moves forward, so that our justice system is compassionate, our healthcare system is compassionate, our economy and how people are rewarded is compassionate. And at the heart of it, it's fair and it's just, and it provides people an opportunity to have the things that they need and deserve.
Now, some people say that color of change is tied to the CIA, and I would have to agree with that, especially with the work that they do and how they are funded. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're called color of change when they literally are facilitating color revolutions. Check this clip out from Mike Benz because it explains exactly what we're seeing going on today.
Here's a declassified CIA guide written in 1983 to train CIA operatives in the field on how to organize riots in foreign countries. And here's a tab on using agitators, including hiring professional criminals to manipulate mass meetings and assemblies of people in person, which can result in general violence. And you will see that they advocate for general violence, where the CIA tells the case officers, our psychological war team must develop in advance a hostile mental attitude among the target groups so that at the given moment, they can turn their anger into violence, demanding the rights taken away by the regime. So make these ethnic minority groups so mad at their government in a general sense that whenever we snap the trigger at the given moment, they will turn that general anger into physical violence against the state that we want to overthrow.
When you take into consideration the corrupt circle of friends that Harry and Meghan keep, I have no doubt that behind the scenes, they are helping with these LA riots in some way or some form, and also helping with what's to come on Saturday, the 14th. How could they not? I mean, they're part of the people who want this destruction. And I'll say it again, this whole thing with Harry and Meghan and the drama that we see to keep us distracted is a show. Okay? It's a show. And yes, what you're looking at is Thomas Markle with the journalist who wrote the article that allegedly ruined his relationship forever with Meghan. And at the same time, Caroline Graham gets this exclusive on Meghan and her twerking video. They all have been lying to you. And Charles knows. There's no doubt he knows. It's just a question of how much does he know? And is he a part of it? Well, we'll never know, will we? Anyhow, let me know your thoughts. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.